Thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris and welcome to a very special LEGO Castle review. So this right here is the Black Knight's Castle from 1992. It was one of the most classic LEGO castles, featuring that raised base plate, some of the nicest printed panel pieces of its time, and a very striking color scheme of black, red, and light gray. So this, when it first came out, was actually one of the largest large-scale LEGO castles they produced for the theme. But this is actually not what we are going to be reviewing today. You see, a very talented mockist in the community named the Brickstop, you can check out their social media all the way down in the description below, has been putting out countless mocks centered around reimagining classic LEGO Castle sub-themes. Whether it's specific sets like this or entire sub-themes in total, there have been countless mocks with so many different unique looks at what classic castle would look like if it was designed today. What's really awesome though is that he is selling the instructions to some of the most fantastic mocks, and the one we're reviewing today is the flagship model. So again, as I mentioned, this is the Black Knight's Castle from 1992, but the model we're reviewing is basically a massive upgrade of this, featuring some modern building techniques but still retaining the classic style. It is the Black Knight Stronghold, and without further ado, let's go take a look at this amazing LEGO Castle MOC right now, where I analyze if it is the best LEGO Castle MOC you can build today that pays homage to vintage classic sub-themes. Alright, so here is the massive Black Knight Stronghold. It is basically the largest classic castle style build I've ever done, and it looks fantastic. I do have to get one thing out of the way though. Obviously this is supposed to be the Black Knight Stronghold, but I did happen to have a surplus of Black Falcon minifigures and shields, so temporarily the Black Falcons are occupying it, and it is now the Black Falcon Stronghold, at least in my own LEGO universe. I just wanted to be able to populate it with some random knights, and I had a surplus of Black Falcon soldiers from my massive Black Falcons army I've been gathering over the course of several months, so I figured why not just include them in this castle to showcase how minifigures could move around. Now, this castle is really massive, and what's really great about it is that it's fully modular, which is great because again, this doesn't officially fit in my review studio. You can see that I can barely even fit it within the realm of my own camera. So what we're going to do is I'll separate this out into sections, show you exactly how that works, and review it section by section, which is a really great way to showcase the ins and outs of every single feature of this build, while still actually making it such that you can see all of the different aspects and not be fully zoomed out all the way. So officially the castle splits into 4 main pieces, and we'll start with the first top gatehouse first. It's very simple, they're just connected via Technic pins, so it makes it very easy to move around as well if you choose to transport this elsewhere in your collection. Let's first split off the main gate from the rest of the castle, taking this part off here first. And you can see the castle really does open up for different modules. We can now move the side gate over here, splitting this section off from the main castle, again by the use of the very handy Technic pins. And even this smaller wall section splits off as well for a bit of a gatehouse on the side. Lastly, this is the largest main chunk of the castle, which we'll get to last in the review. And so, without further ado, let's just start things right off with the initial gatehouse build. Alright, so here we have the excellently done front part of the castle. One thing I really love is just how well the printed yellow panels were integrated into the set. It really does feel like it does have some depth to the printing. It's not just a 2D decal applied on the front, but you've actually got some 3D parts going around it and making it really feel like these are archways into the castle. Now I do want to note one thing, the print on this one is slightly different than the official model. It's not supposed to have these 2 pillars on the side, but I was just working with the pieces that I had on me. And that's really the only offender in the entire set, and basically everything else is 100% what the instructions entail. Moving this around, obviously you can see a ton of detail on the front. One of the things that I do really enjoy about this build in particular, and you'll see this repeated alongside the rest of the modules of the castle, is that while it retains the classic LEGO castle feel, obviously using these large panel pieces with the classic prints, it goes above and beyond in adding a lot of extra detail to really make it pop. Stuff like this studs on the side construction, while simple, is definitely not something you would see in an official classic LEGO castle set. and even the rock work on the side is a lot more detailed than it would be on a standard LEGO set. So I think there's a lot of really nice touches to both make this feel very modern while still retaining the vintage feel of it. Even these pillars alongside the top here have a pretty special construction using one of the rounded pieces up top here to anchor it in place in the center, which again is a pretty advanced technique, or at least something you wouldn't see in the vintage LEGO castle sets. In addition to that, there's even some simple rock work on the side here to provide some detail to the bricks right here, which I think is a great inclusion as well. But moving along to the back, there's actually a surprisingly high amount of different things you can do with this. So obviously, you've got the gate here. Removing this very standard flick fire missile piece can cause it to be lowered, and if you want to raise it up again, you can just lock it in place by sliding this in like so. So it's very simple to raise and lower the gate and lock it down. One other thing I really like about this is that thought has been put into how the minifigures will get up to certain spaces. They don't just magically teleport up like many of the other vintage LEGO Castle sets. There's actually a way for minifigures, or at least you can imagine minifigures, to access every part. Be it this ladder up here which connects to the rest of the castle walls for figures to walk up and climb to these certain areas, and even a semblance of a bit of a landing area in the center here for minifigures to stand as well. There's even a bit of a stair piece right here, just very simple brick stack to show how minifigures could get to certain places in the castle, which I all think is a great inclusion for such a fantastic set like this. Moving on though, there's a lot of very nice surprise features kind of hidden away unless you know what you're looking for and experience the build process yourself. For instance, setting aside this panel right here will reveal an ancient hidden jail cell, complete with a bit of a skeleton inside it. You can barely see the skeleton head right at this angle, but there it is. Just a pretty nice and tucked away hidden feature, which is simultaneously something that LEGO would have totally included in vintage sets, but also makes you feel like you're designing and building something that's made for play, which I think is really great. Even flipping this panel up here, it's hard to notice from certain angles, but this is actually a hinged panel, and underneath are some hidden treasures like a goblet, which you can see right there. And all of those features were just packed into this one relatively small front gatehouse. And since it's just a front gatehouse, there honestly isn't too much you could even do with it, which is why I love the inclusion of such small little play features just scattered throughout the build. And it really does make the build come alive and feel like a lived-in space. But now we can move on from this front gatehouse and move on to the next gatehouse alongside the river. Alright, so here we have one of these side gateways. Again, another thing I really love about this castle is that there's an immense amount of detail on all four sides of the walls. It's not just fully detailed on the front and just has some regular basic side walls. Every single wall is completely unique and has its own story to tell, such as this one right here, featuring an excellent little bridge over a small river flowing underneath. Again, this has a pretty great blend between classic LEGO stuff like the classic trees and using some of the original LEGO pieces from that era of LEGO Castle, like these panels here, but it also includes a lot of extra detail as well, such as the rock work on the side of this window right here. And especially once we get to the backside here, there is a ton to look at. So first of all, we've got a little trapdoor here to toss rocks down on unsuspecting invaders. So opening that up, you've got a stash of rocks to dump down into the center area here, like so. Very simple play feature, but one that a few other LEGO castles had back in the day, and it definitely feels like an homage to some of those classic play features. We've also got, in this area right here, a small little door corridor, and if you open that up, there's actually instructions tell you to put a ghost hidden inside. Unfortunately, I didn't have a ghost to spare, but you can just imagine what it would look like there. And again, that's another very classic LEGO Castle play feature, to have a little ghost hiding behind a few doors. Even along the interior detail of this model, you can actually see that a lot of attention to detail has been placed in actually making sure it makes sense. For instance, right here you can see a bit of the water has been exposed, so you can have a faucet running inside the castle, or some sort of a tap water right here sort of contraption. And this whole water area goes all the way out. You can even see the bubbles emerging from this sink area right here. Just really great attention to detail, having this little nook right here show that water is flowing from outside of the castle out to the river. just from that tiny little sink there that is very, very easy to miss as well. Moving on upwards, we have a very simple weapons rack here. I've actually placed one of the newest weapons from the LEGO Ideas blacksmith shop there, just because it made sense to me to put that there, and some buckets of water and places to drink. Even tucked away underneath the staircase is a little stack or suggestion of wood and logs to be used for other building materials and whatnot, so just a nice suggestion of detail there. And again, this is basically way more detail than you would expect from a standard classic LEGO castle set. It's a lot of really fun stuff packed into here, but stuff that makes sense and could be seen as their own play features in their own right. Now, one thing I do have to mention is that there should be a parrot on the top right here. A gray parrot, unfortunately, was missing it for this particular model, but just so you know, there's actually supposed to be something up top here, which is why this whole Technic thing is sitting like so. But then we can move on from this section of the castle and take a look at the next, smaller tower section. So this right here makes up one of these side towers just to fully complete the castle. I think honestly my favorite part about it is that it replicated the printed yellow piece which was used for the fantasy-esque or medieval type of window paneling here, and actually recreates it with actual bricks at a different angle. So you really get that visual cohesion across the castle. For instance, you can see the part I'm referring to right up here. It's this yellow printed part. Putting them side by side, you can clearly see that this is essentially supposed to be the same exact styling as this piece used for the front of the gate, which makes a lot of sense to me both architecturally and also as a LEGO building. Actually, funnily enough, one of the newer LEGO Creator Castle sets uses a similar technique to have a brick-built replication of one of these European architecture type things or detailings to have different colored stripes for the wood here. Of course, moving this all the way back means that there actually is a lot more play features hidden inside. So first of all, we've got a place to store hay bales. Let's move the blacksmith guy out of the way here. Hay bales on the side there, as well as what I assume is some horse manure. So this is essentially the stable section of the castle grounds. Probably will be putting a horse in there, as well as a suggestion of a weapons rack. Up here, though, is some nice living quarters. You've even got a very simple rose on a table next to the bed right there, as well as a place for looking out the window and storing some cups. And of course, you have a nice place to mount an archer standing guard on a turret right here. Let's step aside from this, though, which is excellently detailed, I will say, and move on to the final, largest structure for this entire castle. Okay, so this right here makes up the large tower in the back of the castle, and it is packed full of details. So obviously you can see moving all the way around you have an excellent mix of the printed classic rockwork on the side here, but you've also got some brick-built rockwork here, and even just some little bits and pieces of 1x1 tiles that extend outwards from the building to make it really feel more alive. There's kind of a secret hatch on the back side of the wall here. Maybe some guys can slip through here and sneak into the castle, so that's kind of a funny inclusion. And we've even got a whole underground section right here to store some hidden treasure. Let's take a look at that right here. You've got a panel hidden by some vines with a treasure chest hidden inside, as well as a little mouse with a piece of cheese hiding underneath the catacombs of the castle. Now, the interior of this structure is pretty great as well. You've got a jail cell here that opens up. You can actually have some people stored within there. And moving on to the back here, you actually have a bit of a throne build here, and even some places for gold and magic items to be stored all the way in that back corner there. Zooming in, you can take a look at just exactly what that looks like. Right in the back with some stacks of golden coins, but specifically the yellow LEGO studs, which is a very classic inclusion back before they even had pieces for individual coins. You would typically see the LEGO studs in yellow being used for valuables, as well as a place for some golden cups and the magic spellcasting book there. Another detail I do have to note is that a tapestry is supposed to hang down from here. Unfortunately, that flag piece is quite expensive, and I already spent a ton on building this castle. More on that at the end of this video, but I just chose to not include it because you can't really see it most of the time. It's basically the same flag that you'll see on the other Black Knight's castle. Perhaps in universe, the Black Falcons removed it because it, of course, is not their livery. Zooming out, though, we can take a look at the rest of this build. Let's move it up here. I really love the way that this tower in particular has been shaped, just the excellent use of different small window pieces to provide a little bit of a look inside the interior should you wish to open these windows up, and it all feels very sensible to have the roof sloping upwards and then having this tower protruding from the top. Of course, as you move along to the side and interior here, you can see that this is also chock full of a lot of interior details once you actually get to play around with it. There's a bit of a balcony section right in there, so you can see that minifigures could say stand in this particular section and look out over the balcony to observe anyone entering from the bottom level. You've got a little cup and a chalice right there, as well as a great build for a section of the library right there with some books in the bookshelves, and even a little miniature chess game for minifigures to play against each other. On the top rack here, it's really just a weapons rack and a place to store armor or helmets, but it is good and realistic that that would be included, and again, it provides access for minifigures to pretty much be able to go up and around this castle by imagining either interior details like climbing up stairs over here, and being able to jump up to the top places here. And of course, being able to access all of the interior spaces here, because even as someone with adult-sized hands, you can really get figures in here and start to play around with how they're posing maybe inside these certain rooms and areas, especially if they're not holding massive swords. And again, just one thing I really want to point out is some excellent rock work and shaping on the back side of the castle here, really giving it a unique kind of cracked rock feel that again is very unique for a LEGO build of this type. Rotating this around, you can see this front tower in all of its glory. Looks fantastic, and honestly, this could probably be a pretty good castle set in its own right. But now let's reassemble all the different sections and take a look at the castle as a whole. Alright, so once this is all assembled, you can see it really starts coming together as a full model. I'm going to start lifting the camera up here so we can get a few closer looks, especially at how this looks from above. It's both compact but very sprawling as a castle build, and you can really see just how good it looks from basically every angle. One of the downsides to some of the original LEGO Castle sets is that they essentially had a very nicely detailed back and front, but the side walls were really kind of lacking, and they were basically just standard wall-built structures. But that is not the case here, because even if I were to set this down and rotate it all the way around to one side, like so, it still looks just as good from this angle, and some people could even think that this angle is the front of the castle because this is just so well detailed, having this bridge over water here. Even from the backside, if you ignore the exposed place to be able to access the interior tower right here, you can see that the back wall has a lot of excellent detail allotted to it. And that detail continues across pretty much all sides of this fantastic model. One of my favorite details, as I mentioned, is the inclusion of this brick-built yellow and black window, which again is really basically only seen from the back and side angles, but still looks fantastic as part of the main build for this model. So I'm sure that a lot of people will be wondering how much exactly does it cost to build this, and I hopefully can be able to explain a little bit of the interesting technique I used to actually order all of the pieces for this over a long period of time. So for the vast majority, most of the standard pieces included in the set are currently available from LEGO today, which means that you can order them on Bricks and Pieces right now and get the vast majority of the parts. In fact, it set me back around $130 to get all of the currently available pieces from Bricks and Pieces for this model, and I've included a link to a video down in the description below to actually be able to order any piece you want from Bricks and Pieces, a bit of a tutorial video if you want to check that out. Unfortunately though, then when you get down to the vintage pieces, that's where the real cost of this starts coming in. So for instance, when you purchase the instructions for this model, you get a Bricklink wanted list file, which you can import into Bricklink and see the overall price for basically all the pieces in the set. And when I threw it in Bricklink, it was telling me something ridiculous, like $2,000 or some crazy amount like that. So that's why I went through Bricks and Pieces and ordered every single piece I possibly could from LEGO's own site. But then that kind of left me again with some of these vintage stuff. Stuff like these wall panels here, the side castle pieces here, and even the printed panels here are extremely expensive on Bricklink. So essentially, kind of what I had to do was order those pieces one by one. And it was a little bit of a hassle trying to arrange all of the ordering, but I think it was really worth it for the final product. One thing that I do think that people should be aware of that kind of surprised me is that some of these pieces are rarer than you might expect. For instance, let me just try to remove this piece here so I can make a demonstration. This panel right here, which is really just your standard curved panel, only appeared in blue in one set. So this was actually really hard to obtain on Bricklink because it was so rare and not very many people had it for sale. You would think that for a part that's still in production today, it would have appeared in this standard color in more sets, but actually no, this really only was in one set several years ago. So if you wanted two of them for this castle, be prepared to have to hunt for that all over Bricklink. Let me reattach this here and put the castle back together. The other thing I do want to note is that these black panel pieces only also appeared in a few select LEGO Castle sets, so those were quite expensive. I actually had to order these internationally to get even a somewhat decent price for that, and shipping, of course, is quite expensive. And of course, these yellow panels only actually appeared in a few of the Black Falcons and Black Knight sets, which made them about $15 to $20 each on Bricklink, and since there's 3 of them in this set, I really need to spend upwards of $45 to $60 on 3 individual pieces. Although thankfully I got one that was very scratched, which isn't too noticeable because you've got this black piece around it, so I got this one for a little bit cheaper. Even these classic 4x10 plates, which you would not imagine would be too expensive, only appeared in vintage sets. So again, I had to actually hunt these down on Bricklink in particular, although thankfully some of them I was able to just build out of other red plates and kind of stack them together, and it looks just the same. So all in all, while the bulk of the majority of these pieces from Bricks and Pieces were only around $130, buying every single other piece will cost you probably about as much. And you probably will have to spend upwards of $300 to $400 on this when all is said and done. Now, I do want to note one other thing is that thankfully I did have the benefit of owning many of these pieces in my own collection. So many of these pieces that have printed rocks on them actually came from my own sets and my own collection, as well as this panel piece here. So of course, I definitely did not spend nearly as much as $300 to $400, but that's kind of a ballpark estimate based on how much I think it would cost to buy every single one of these should you not already own any of these pieces. Now, of course, you could definitely do a cheaper version of this should you want. Swapping out these blue curved pieces for maybe just square pieces could easily do the job just as well, although maybe it might not look nearly as good for the flowing water here. And for even these printed panels, you could very easily get away with just getting the unprinted versions of them, which of course are much cheaper. Even for stuff like the red plates here, splitting them up into individual red plates is definitely going to make it a lot cheaper for you to purchase the pieces. And all in all, in order to build this, you really only need a few select very vintage pieces to actually complete the look. Stuff like these large black panels here and up here, you can't really avoid those. And the same goes for these corner castle pieces, which are also quite rare. But other than those, you can make a lot of substitutions, so I'd recommend that if you're looking to build this on a budget, definitely go through the instructions and try and figure out which pieces you actually need. The other thing is that the instructions include parts to a ton of different minifigures, which I opted not to include for this castle because I already was building my own Black Falcon's army. So that will take a ton of cost off of this model as well, if you choose not to purchase all of the minifigures, accessories, the horses and their armor and so on. You can essentially just have the full-on castle by itself for all intents and purposes. Definitely let me know down in the comments below if you want any more tips on purchasing this castle or the parts for this castle a little bit cheaper, because honestly, I think that anyone who is a fan of LEGO Castle in general should own this model, should have the chance to build it, because it is basically a love letter to vintage castle sets. And I will say this right now, it was probably my favorite castle building experience, and it's currently my favorite castle that I own in LEGO format throughout my entire collection. And I own basically every single or almost every single LEGO castle anyways, so that is definitely high praise. Would highly recommend purchasing the instructions for this model, again linked in the description below, and let me know in the comments, what do you think of this model? Go check out the brick stop because this is definitely not his only castle, and he has a ton more stuff listed on his site. At the time of recording this video, there is another flagship castle Wolfpack Manor build, which I definitely have my eyes on and probably will be doing a build and review for, should there be enough interest in this video as well. Alright, and with that, we've taken a look at the Black Knight Stronghold, one of the most impressive and largest classic castle MOCs that I've ever encountered, which seamlessly blends the modern sensibilities of modern building techniques and parts usages with the classic vintage era style of LEGO building. I hope you enjoyed this video, and again, do check out the instructions linked below. You can purchase them from the brick stop today. I hope you enjoyed this special look at a very special LEGO castle, and definitely go show the brick stop some love at his channel down below. Thank you all for tuning into Duck Bricks, and stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. If you like this style of video as well and want to see me review more LEGO MOCs, be it classic stuff or even space stuff and whatnot, let me know down in the comments below and I'll be sure to check out any suggestions that you may have. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye bye for now.